Assalone, and I was born in Seoul, Korea in 1978 and adopted to Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I'm 43 years old. I also have a sister who was adopted from Korea as well, and she was 9 months old. And we grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma as pretty much the only Korean adoptees and Korean Americans in our community and family. You come home and you can't talk to your parents about that. They don't understand. And you can't talk to your friends about that. They don't understand. And you don't want to either, because you're kind of embarrassed too that you even experienced that, like somebody, making fun of the way you look. So I was able to talk to my sister about it, but it's kind of like, what do you call the blind leading the blind? Like, we're just both sitting there talking about it. But yeah, but I guess that's better than what a lot of adoptees had, who they were the only ones in their family. So Dylan International is the organization, the adoption agency that we went through, and they're headquartered in Tulsa. And so we did have a small community of other Korean adoptee friends who we would have reunions with every year until I was about 10 years old. We did experience racism. We did definitely feel different. I never felt like I was white. Both my parents are white. It wasn't always negative or in bad ways, but it was obvious. And then I also did returned to Korea 2 years ago with my sister, and I reunited with my birth family there. And so I feel like now I feel more connected to the Korean community there because I have 5 older sisters who live there, and then my birth mother who also lives there too. So my story until I was 40 years old that I believed and I knew was that she found out she was pregnant, and because she was young and poor, she decided to give me up for adoption. And this is the story that's in my adoption paperwork, which we all found out later is all, fabricated, and it's some writer from college or something wrote it. And so I, like, all growing up and stuff, thinking, I hope she's doing well. She's probably moved on with her life. Why would I search for her? I got an email saying that they had connected with my birth family, and the story was that my birth parents were trying to have a boy, and they had 5 girls. Because I was not a boy, I was given up because they, I guess they just didn't want to have a 6th girl. And I think it had a lot to do with my grandmother on my father's side was really pushing my birth father to have a boy, because in the Korean tradition back then in the 70s, I think, you needed to have a boy to take over the family business and everything. And she was very mean to my mom, and she kind of had a lot to do with them giving me up. My sister, Chrissy, decided a year and a half ago, I guess it's maybe 2 years ago, because of the experience going through that with me, she decided to submit her paperwork. And she found out the reason she was adopted is the same. She was the youngest of 5 girls, and her parents were pushing for her mom to have a boy. She wasn't a boy, so she was given up for the same reason. And then also found out a year before, that year before my father had passed away from a heart attack, and my mom she is in a nursing home with Alzheimer's. So, but my older sisters were the ones who responded, and they sent me pictures and everything. I connected with my sisters right away. I got to go to the nursing home to see my mom. My adoptive mother gave me a whole photo album full of pictures of me growing up to give to them. And so we sat in the nursing home with my mother. Even though she didn't know who I was, she was talking about giving up the child. And she actually had confided into one of my sisters to look for me one day. And so they knew that I existed, but they didn't know how to find me. I ended up getting married, and I left Tulsa, and I moved actually up to Philadelphia in North Jersey, right outside of New York City, and was for the first time in a diverse community. And I met other Korean Americans, and I started engaging with them, and I started actually becoming interested. I think that, this is about when I turned 30, and it was the first time I had Korean food and met someone else who was actually from Korea. And I really started getting interested in learning more about just being Asian American. And then I decided to apply to a doctoral program to get my PhD in higher education. And in that program, we studied students of color, minority serving institutions, and actually, at this point, I moved back to Texas. And so I was in Dallas, and that's where I did my PhD program. So that's when I really started focusing and found an interest, in Asian Americans, and ended up joining some Asian American groups in Texas and in the higher education community. And then ultimately, I did my dissertation on Asian American communities, college students in Texas. And I ended up, from that, connecting with some other Korean adoptees in the higher ed world or student affairs world. And they introduced me to the KAN conference, which is the Korean Korean American Adoptee Network, and then also ICA, which is the International Korean Adoptee Association. After I completed my PhD program, I moved to Atlanta. I also got a divorce, and I kind of just, after that divorce, I decided I want to just really embrace my identity and really, for the first time, just live for myself. I think he was very threatened by the fact that I started embracing an identity that he couldn't connect with, and he also just was a very I think unhappy person anyways, and trying to figure out his own stuff. So no, he was not, I did not feel like he was very supportive of the work that I was doing or the research. And it was in a way kind of holding me back. I was ready to really embrace who I was and grow as a person. And I don't think that he, was on board for that. I jumped right into the Asian American community as soon as I got to Atlanta, and started doing a lot of stuff with Asian Americans advancing justice. And then they connected me with the Korean American Coalition in Atlanta. That's how I ended up getting embraced, because I think it's because I had the chance to actually get involved and engage in that community, which I never really had growing up. Yeah, I think it was a little bit different. Obviously, if I'm used to being around Korean adoptees, having a sister who's also a Korean adoptee, you kind of have a little bit of everything in the adoptee community. But no, and then, when you do meet Korean Americans, you do feel like sometimes they have expectations of you. I've become a lot more comfortable with the community. So my sister and I are very different. All of my closest friends right now are Korean adoptees or Korean Americans. And she has stayed in Tulsa where, with the exception of her son who's half Korean, they're the only Asians in their community. So I've kind of started embracing my identity and really see myself as a Korean American, and she doesn't, which is pretty common among a lot of Korean adoptees who have siblings who are also Korean adoptees. It's usually one who embraces their Korean identity and the other one who, doesn't so much. I've come to understand that, though, because the thing is, she came with me to ICA. She was in Korea. She said it was the best experience of her life. She finally felt like she was in her community. She never felt that great before, She said all her anxiety issues, everything went away. I came back to Atlanta, and I'm in this Korean American community with all these adoptees too. And I'm getting to share all this information. She goes back to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she has nobody to talk to. No Korean Americans around her. It's helped me understand, so I can understand why sometimes she's interested and sometimes she's not. I also talk to other adoptees who are in environments where they don't have that. And it's hard. It's hard when you see us in Atlanta doing all these fun things. We put on events, we get together, we go to dinner, they can't do that there. What are my biggest regrets? I guess I would say I more don't believe in regrets, because I do feel like everything happens for a reason. I talk to my whole life story, if you think about it, has just been abnormal since the beginning. So it's kind of but everything's worked out. I feel like everything that's happened that's been unfortunate has been for a reason, and it's gotten me where I am today. My name is Amanda Assalone, and this is my Korean American story.